Welcome back into the Add 10 Gallons Concrete Podcast. We welcome in the one, the only, Lee Thrasher. Welcome.
Good to see you guys again. Good to be talking with you.
Good to see you, brother. The only thing I don't like about having you on is I'm now ganged up on. We've got 2 Tennessee Vol fans to 1 Alabama Crimson Tide, and that's just not the way the world should work.
I hope it's a sign of times to come, to be honest with you. I ain't going to lie.
Yeah, we need some of those, streaks back in the 90s, Lee?
Yes.
We had a pretty good run against Alabama, home and away, I think.
I'm happy to know that I'm old enough now to remember that, you know?
Yeah.
We had the saving years. We all knew it was going to come to an end at some point. And as soon as the guy leaves, we lose 4 games in a season. I mean, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
It's wide open this year, though, I think. I think aside from, maybe Georgia and Texas, I don't know what to think about SEC football this year. I think it's going to be even crazier than last year. Last year, I thought was pretty wide open last year. I think this year going to be worse or better, however you want to look at it.
Yeah, I would say it's better. I like competition.
I mean,
I like it. I like it when it's better. I mean, no politics, but undefeated seasons are just inherently socialists. So you want to have more competition, more chances. Bring more people into the game, that kind of thing. So I agree with you. I think you could take this year more than any. You can take the polls and just throw them out 6 weeks through the season, 8 weeks through, probably even 8 weeks through, because it's going to be, it's really going to be week to week. I look forward to getting it started because I think all the chaos that is not good inherently for the sport has created a thing where even some of the coaches don't even know what they have. It's just going to be, it's going to be fun to watch. I hope it could be a train wreck, but let's hope it's going to be competitive and a lot of teams are better than you think. Teams that you think might run away with it, like a Texas or Georgia, are actually going to have some weak spots people can exploit down the road, and it stays competitive to the end. That's what I hope for.
Well, it's competitive
on top at the end of the day.
As competitive as it is, though, whether you got returning champ Georgia, you've got media darling Texas, you've got Alabama, who's always waiting in the wing, you got Tennessee, who made the college football playoff last year. Let's not forget. But all these teams at the top, those 4, including Ole Miss and more, they've all got new quarterbacks. Some quarterbacks who've never taken a snap in these uniforms hardly, but not a meaningful snap anyway. So anything could happen when you don't even know if the signal car is going to be any good.
Yeah, I really think that things that just made SEC football what it is throughout history, the line and being able to run the ball, defense, and being able to rotate out people, being able to control that clock with fresh players and control the line of scrimmage. I think the days of being able to have, a sloppy game with 7 explosive plays and you beat somebody, by 35 points are gone. It's just, I don't see that this year. I really think it's going to be in the trenches and the freshness of the players and the rotation. And everybody's had such a hard time recruiting. That's what makes it to where I think it's going to be a really dynamic kind of year. Because while you might have 80% of your roster locked up, it's that left side you're going to be worried about that you just don't have enough fresh guys, and folks are going to figure out how to exploit it. And so I think the coaches are all familiar with everybody's scheme. There's been so much rotation around that world and all. It's going to be interesting with the lack of divisions and just sort of a free-for-all. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be real interesting to see how they plan out that schedule, how you deal with that loss that's going to show up. I think I can't see anybody going undefeated in the SEC. I really can't. It's possible, sure, but I don't think so. So where's that loss coming? How are you going to deal with it? How your players going to respond? And I think it's going to be more like old school football in a lot of ways.
I kind of wish, since we've done away with the divisions, I kind of wish we would just do away with the championship game, personally. I know it'll probably never happen because there's too much money at stake, but there could be cases where these teams will play each other 3 times. They could play each other in regular season, and they could potentially play each other in the championship. And if they make the college football playoff, they play them then. So I don't know. It's almost, to me, it's almost like that championship game is irrelevant now, because I mean, if you're what, so like 7-1, in SEC play, and the next guy, the next team up is 5-3 or something, something crazy or whatever. Do you really need to play that championship to see who the better team is? I don't know.
Yeah, you could have that in the Big Ten too. By the way, Penn State and Oregon are absolutely set up to play in the regular season, play in the championship, play in the playoff. It could absolutely happen to them too.
Yeah, I think it's going to be up and down, chaotic till probably 2028 season. I think it's a lot of the contracts on TVs and money deals and sponsorships and things kind of run out next year, 26. So that's why they're talking so much about what's the structure going to be, and going to the 9 conference games and setting the 10 Power 4 now instead of Power 5 games and all. I don't know how long this whole conference alignment of the Big Ten can last. I think it's going to be such fatigue on the downstream sports in those universities with travel and the fan base. It's going to strain them at some point. It's just not sustainable. So I'm just trying to make it through the next 2 or 3 years without having a 2 or 3 year run of a dumpster fire at Tennessee and like we've had in the past, and just get to that point. I want to see the administration and the staff and Heupel. I'm glad he got extended recently. So I think it's just going to be nutty for the next couple of years till we kind of get in that 2027, 28 season. And then I think we can kind of settle in for what college football is going to be going forward for, at least a 5 to 10 year run at that point. But until then, yeah, I think the pressure to get rid of those games is going to come in pretty hard. Some bowl realignment coming in pretty hard to try to incorporate, you extend it to 16 teams, which is probably coming. I think they're probably going to eventually limit the number of teams that are eligible for playoffs. And that's going to kick a whole different stream of different level of football at those lower divisions, and what that means for those players and those schools and all is going to make a big impact in the recruiting world, the transfer and all. So it's crazy. It's absolutely chaotic crazy. I just hope it makes it for good product on the field and not just terrible product on the field.
Do you think there will ever come a time where our battered Vol syndrome subsides for the most part? Mine's still going pretty strong.
It's still there. I think I hope the optimism for this year is really relevant to a 7 or 8 win season would be like fantastic. I don't just because we made the playoff last year, I don't want people fanatic, calling for something silly. But it's still there. It still stings. We'll probably get reminded by somebody this year of what it was like on the field if we're not careful. But yeah, I think it will slowly start to subside under Heupel. I think he and Danny are the right combination at the right time as far as admin and university leadership. If they can just weather this storm and keep some of those nuts out of the booster meetings, it'd be great. It'll be great to see what they can build, long term to give Vols a chance to be relevant consistently versus a roller coaster.
But it's so there's so many uncertainties with the Vols this year. It wouldn't surprise me. We could potentially go 6-6, or we could go 10-2, 11-1, something like that. That's how uncertain I think everybody is of us, which I'm fine with. I would rather us kind of fly under the radar and have low expectations than all that spotlight be on us.
No doubt. I want to be going into that, now second, not third, second Saturday in October game of the going into that. Well, I guess it is a third. Is it the third?
It's a third. We just got a bye week.
Next year's the one that I know coming up they were going to mess with it. You can edit that out.
Well, I got to tell you, I'm going to start with a positive note. and then we got to jump to a negative note, and then eventually we're going to turn this into a concrete podcast again.
Yeah.
But the positive note is my daughter loved the handwritten note you included with the schedule this year, Lee. She just, I mean, absolute kid. You smiling ear to ear. All the little things that she's learning about the nicknames for the teams and what are these acronyms, and she's like, oh my gosh, like she loves learning all the new little intricacies about college football.
Yeah.
She's a little disappointed that you're a Tennessee fan, but you know she knows that we as Alabama fans, we need somebody to hate, so she's happy that you exist.
That's good. That's good. She can give me a hard time anytime she wants. You know,
and
that's fine.
But I
think it's awesome. It was so much fun to get that note from you and have a chance to do that. That was really cool.
It was a highlight.
Pretty awesome. It's
highlight for her. Highlight for her, man. And so this is our first full year, like really getting into it together. So I'm really excited. And but I gotta hit you with a negative too. And before we hit the record button, you were slandering week 0 of the college football season. And, you know, I don't think you're alone in that. I think there's a lot of people that sort of look at week 0 as what are we doing? But I disagree. I'm jonesing for college football at times it comes around. And you just mentioned 5 seconds ago, you're like, I don't think we're going to see those games where it's a little sloppy and there's turnovers. Whoever wins the turnover battle has got a chance to win the game. If you watched week 0, Iowa State versus Kansas State, you got exactly that. It was exactly that. They were in Ireland. It wouldn't stop raining. Couldn't even see the lines on the field. These boys were out there stomping around in the mud, and that was real football. I mean, yeah, it's the Big 12. We like to laugh at them, but that was real football. Iowa State, their quarterback looked the real deal. Their defensive line looked legit. Kansas State couldn't keep their head on straight, and yet they still only lost by like 1 point. I mean, it was really a fun matchup. So I think you need to take it back. I think week 0 is just as much fun. It's as much fun as you want to let it be in your life.
Well, that's true. You can choose to wake up and be happy every day. And I have been looking forward to college football getting kicked off. I'll admit I haven't been as engaged as I have been in the past. You know, just soaking up ESPN radio for the entire summer. Gotten into a few other things, you know, to fill my time going up and down the road. But now that it's here, definitely getting back into it. It's not that I don't like the week 0. I'm not sure it's what's right for the game. You know, it's very much NFL-ish. There's already enough of that and the money driver and all that. So that's my only hang up about the week 0. You know, I mean, week 1 is tomorrow night when Mizzou squares up on the field because the SEC's playing. But, you know, I like the idea of college football being here again. I'm glad that they find ways to introduce it a little bit so you do get a chance to kind of, you know, get the recipes dusted off and get back in the swing of things. Get the Saturday morning stuff tuned in, but I don't know. I don't want it to go too far down the road of the NFL. But yeah, I'm definitely glad that it's here. Definitely glad it's here. It's my hope that on the third, you know, we're going into the 3rd week of October and some of that mist of the Smoky Mountains is coming over from the days of Appalachian State, and Joey's just really showing, you know, the kind of athlete and everything he is, and we're set in that regard and looking good for the rest of the year. So we'll see. But yeah, be sure and tell if it's a good game on our end, Paul. You can tell Becca that noise she's hearing rattling the windows. That's me on my deck hollering from over here in Jasper, and it just echoes down the mountain down there to you. Well,
that's great.
Down there to Tuscaloosa and coming through, but yeah. It's pretty cool. Pretty cool. You got her up there in I guess you're right in the heart of Big Ten country. Staying true to the SEC. I like it.
Yeah.
Good for her. Way to raise her right, as we say here in the South.
That's right. And you know, it's interesting. I've been trying to explain to her those dynamics of we root for the SEC as long as if we're playing the other SEC team, we want to stomp them into the mud. But if you're watching Auburn playing Baylor on Friday night, we ain't rooting for Baylor. We want the SEC to win the game. So it's gonna be a fun season. It's fun. She went to school. She has a Alabama backpack. She wore an Alabama sweatshirt and has Alabama stickers on her lunchbox. So teacher at the new school was like, you know, what is all this? Like, you're a fan of Alabama or the SEC? She's like, oh, I'm from there, and I want people to know it.
That's good.
Yes, ma'am.
That's good. That's good. That's good, man.
Well, you mentioned that you hadn't been listening to so much ESPN radio when you was driving around to and fro, and I assume a lot of that traveling has to do with work and doing the component stuff over there at CTS. Man, give us an update. What the heck's going on with you and CTS and component? How's things going?
Yeah, it's going good. Everything we do with component, lives and breathes by the ready mix industry, going through ready mix plants, and for the majority of our work, which is not necessarily true on the rapid set side. So it's a little bit more independent. It's going strong. Company's going strong, going good. The component side is a little bit hit or miss this year, kind of the way the industry is, especially in the southeast. I've talked to some producers, and they're having a pretty good year, and feel like this quarter is going to be the quarter where they might actually catch up to budget a little bit. Talked to some other guys, and they're getting a little nervous because this is the time of year where they're normally really looking at bidding and quoting a lot of vertical work, and it's just not there for the beginning of the year. So it's been kind of the same way for us. It comes in spurts. We'll knock out a couple of jobs in a row and have a little gap, and a couple more jobs in a row, and so overall, it's good. Could always be better, but that's true no matter what you're selling, right? But yeah, it's going good. Kind of shifted a lot of my focus back up into Georgia and the Carolinas, where it just seems like that manufacturing space, whether it's driven with the data centers and the growth at the ports, or a variety of drivers are coming into that, but definitely seeing more folks jumping into the shrink comp game and kind of a little bit closer to home, which has been fun for me. So it's driving, not flying, than where some of my travels were taking me last year. So that's been a good change this year, being able to stay a little bit more central focused and having work closer to home. But all
Yeah,
good, all good.
glad to hear that, man. Yeah, these data centers. I actually thought so when I guess it was probably 2022 going into 2023 was kind of the height of the data center warehouse building, and then 2023 into 2024 it seemed like it was slopping off, and people were pausing construction on these things and weren't really sure what they were going to do. But lo and behold, we get into 2025 and it was like they turned the switch back on, and they're like, yeah, we're going to build more data centers than ever, and they're going to be bigger than ever, and they're going to use innovative materials more than ever. It's really been kind of a surprise to me that they just flip that switch. Or what are you seeing out there, whether it's on the shrinkage compensating side or other things with these data centers? Are you involved in very many of these projects? Because it just seems like it's on fire again, like it was 3 years ago.
Yeah, definitely in Georgia. You can't hardly open up the Atlanta Business Journal without at least one or two articles a week being about power demand and data centers. Still, you would think that was very much the case last year, and you'd think it kind of fall off, but it just seems like it's a recurring thing, because we're consistently in the top 3 to 4 states of that type of construction. It's kind of hit or miss for us on that shrink comp side, depending on who the owner is and what they're looking for, whether or not we get involved. That's one thing that's been kind of curious to me, is the variety in design and variety in approach, depending on which one of those entities owns it. It's not like there's 15 dozen owners out there, but the ones that do it definitely have their own way of doing them, and they're doing them a little bit differently depending on where they go in the country. So that's been kind of interesting to see when we get involved and when we don't. Just saw speaking of the Business Journal, just saw where the Rivian plant is kicking back up again, and that was like big news several months back, where they paused construction on that. And you're like, oh great, is this a sign of the times? Because there's so much work going in the Carolinas and Georgia based on vehicle manufacturing and auxiliary components and things. So you're like, great, what does that mean for all these battery plants and other automotive manufacturing? So not sure what the sign of the times is or not, but it was glad to see that mega investment in the state of Georgia, and I forgot how many thousands of jobs that thing's going to be bringing in, is back on, and they're moving forward with that. So I think that's good to see that a little bit of a fear of some of this manufacturing that was based heavily into certain sectors that you're not sure how economic or interest rate or political winds are going to swing it. It's kind of holding true to that age old lesson. It really doesn't matter who's in office. It's how our company's going to adjust to the current policy, because we're in it for the long term. They're in it for the short term. So you just got to figure out how you're going to adjust and move forward. And so if that holds true, some of the other things that are going, I think it's going to be really good going into next year. So I'm really hoping this is sort of like the lull before the storm, maybe. Give us a chance to maybe enjoy a little football for a while before we really have to get out and start hustling like crazy again, because there's going to be a lot of things to shake a stick at out there.
Yeah, I mean, the best thing about this football season right now is this weather. Holy cow!
Oh man, it's great.
My goodness gracious! Have we ever had this? It's the first week of the football season. We're not going to be sweating our rear ends off. It's like going to be 70 degrees at kickoff time. I mean, I don't even know where I am right now in the world that it's August and it's going to be 70 degrees. Are there concrete guys right now sweating their brakes because the temperature's freaking 50 degrees at 5 a.m. right now in August? This is crazy.
Yeah, they might be. That's been sort of another part of my world for quite a while now with some of the local industry stuff and some of my ASTM world and all. And man, it's been like, a constant focus. But yeah, definitely going into winter, it's going to be real interesting this year to see how things stack up versus last year. Now that it's almost 100% across the board implementation of new powders and binders and things and new ones coming out. That to me is one of the most exciting things going in the industry. It seems like there's more binder changes, kind of to the tune of what there used to be for admix changes. Not that there's not admix changes going along with it, because they're doing a great job of innovating and adapting as well. But I think, sort of that shock and awe of the changeover that took place in the cement side of the world is starting to kind of settle in as well. Now we're starting to get a picture of what that's going to be like in the future. And so I think that's going to be probably one of the most exciting things about, next year. I think, we talked about it before. I think that's one of the biggest innovative things coming. And if you're not really paying attention to how to evaluate and test your binders as a ready-mix producer, you gotta get there. Well, this little lull in business, if you're seeing it, is the time to kind of build up, like old Swan Zoo, prepare for war in times of peace. Well, it's peaceful now, so get ready, because come next year, I think there's going to be so many different binder changes and new binders coming out. Producers are going to have probably as many options to test on binders as they are on admixtures, which I can't remember that ever happening in my career.
No, that is crazy. The academic side of things for a long time was focused on the calcined clay. Seems like that might be moving toward some sort of industry adoption over the next couple of years. There's certainly the more aggressive folks are already planning to have it in some projects right now, but it's like it could be widespread adoption for some people. At least that's what I'm hearing rumblings of. If a product can come to market with the right specs and be available, that's another key. It's funny. So we're in the clay business. Joey and I, our parent company's in the clay business, and one of the things that's interesting is that the size of a customer for a clay producer is, X number of thousands of tons is like a big customer. Mm-hmm. But then you move into the cement business and you're like, oh, we're going to replace 10% of cement or 20, LC3, 30% of cement is going to get replaced, and a giant chunk of that is going to be calcined clay. You're talking millions of tons are going to be necessary, and the clay plants aren't built on that type of scale. There's not a lot that not a lot of plants out there that can handle that type of volume. You need another plant. I mean, it's massive volume. So even if the concrete industry and cement world is pulling this, there's going to have to be a form of catch up. And what a lot of folks may not understand is a little bit of inside baseball for you here is you need to own the land. And I'm talking about the reserve, so you can actually access that clay. So it's, when you company like ours that has the access to the clay itself, like there's only so much of it. I mean, there's a lot of it, don't get me wrong, but we've found most of it. So we know where it's at, and you got the rights to it. So if anybody wants to dig into that clay, you got to find the guy that's got the rights to it, not just the people. And then Then it's like, okay, now we can figure out how to actually get out of the ground, how to get it to a plant, how to condition it, how to calcine it. All those learning steps, they can't even come until you can even get your hands on the stuff. So it's a really interesting problem. And, eventually what I think is going to happen is these cement guys, they're not going to end up necessarily doing it themselves. They're going to partner with clay companies. I think that's what's going to end up happening, because it's just, if you want it to happen quickly, you're either going to buy a clay company or you're going to work with a clay company. It's going to have to be that, because number one thing in this business almost always seems to come down to cost, right? And if you've got too many middlemen in there and the stuff's changing hands and everybody wants 20, 30, 40% of it, nobody's going to buy it, because it's going to be $350, $400 a ton. So if you want this stuff to be in the $200 a ton range, you're gonna have to own it, and it's gonna be fun times. It's gonna be wild times. I'm guessing the next 2 years is gonna be crazy on the calcined clay.
Yeah. I think you said a couple of things there. The scalability is a big deal. It's come up, quite often. We're going to be talking about that a lot too in December. Actually, I'll put a little plug in for the workshop we go on here in Atlanta. ASTM's coming to Atlanta. We got a great workshop that Sunday, December 7th, about what needs to happen as far as standardization and material acceptance and things like that in order to help novel materials and the push for sustainability and deliverables, truly deliverables at the market level, at the structure level for these things. It's such a involved process when you get down to the paperwork of the idea. You can have an idea and you can have material, and calcined clays are kind of like metakaolins, and they're tested those things for years, found great ones right here in Georgia, like you're talking about, and they were wonderful. They do amazing things in the concrete, but it's that cost, scalability, and implementation and the paperwork that just prevented it from having widespread market adoption. I think everybody recognizes we don't have that luxury anymore, because we're not spoiled on the primary binder side anymore. We're going to have to figure these things out. And I think it's going to drive the ready mix industry as a whole to be more regional than it's ever been, because you're going to have so many different, suppliers in your primary ingredients coming in, diversification. You're going to have to kind of handle it almost to the plant by plant level, because some of these things are going to be so good and they're going to find a way to meet those things like you talked about, economics and everything else, but they're not going to have the scalability to serve all your plants. So you're going to have like these 2 or these 5 or 10, whatever it is, and they're going to be fantastic. And that's going to be settled, then you're going to go to the next one. And it's just going to take a while for everything to settle out. I think some of the acquisitions, we were talking about earlier, that have come up lately, pretty massive. There's not a big, to my knowledge, there's not any big independent supplementary material suppliers left in the Southeast, with CIFA and Eco Materials selling out to cement companies. So I think that's a kind of a sign of what's to come as well. How much of that's going to be implemented into that tanker showing up on your yard to deliver your Portland versus what's going to be available for you to use as a true supplementary material. And what does that mean for those things downstream, everything downstream? So, it's going to be a challenge, but I think it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be cool to see ready mix producers get a chance to truly set themselves apart, get above the fray of what everybody's hearing out on the street, and just provide like a new look to high quality, high performance concrete for their customers and set themselves apart. I think the great opportunity for some of those mid-sized companies that are out there, the family companies that are out there that do a great job at what they do and leading in the industry, can kind of step up and say, we're going to do it this way. And they're going to have so much sway in how they do that if they do it right. I think it's going to be cool to see, really cool to see.
Yeah, just circling back, we got a lot of points we could touch on there. I want to circle back real quick to the Rivian plant down in Georgia, because I thought that company was like really struggling. Fisker was the one that went out of business, I think, and then Rivian, I think, was struggling, and they're trying to find a way to cut costs back in 2024. And while he was talking, I was able to pull up a Construction Dive article, and just a little background for the audience that the reason they're restarting that plant in Georgia was an infusion of cash. They got a loan from the Department of Energy. The Department of Energy has like a advanced vehicle fund that they will fund some of these plants, but the Rivian is not allowed to access that money, which is like $6 billion that the government's loaning them with interest. But they're not allowed to access that money until that Georgia plant is under construction. So it looks like they break ground next month. I don't think the facility has to be completed. I think they just has to be under construction, and resumes work on that factory. So that's good news for Georgia. Not just the headquarters they put in Atlanta that's going to eventually have 500 people working for them in the headquarters, but then the plant, which is going to employ at least 1,000 people, not to mention jobs to construct the plant and everything else. So nice big boon to Georgia. And then I want to slide right quick into, you mentioned that acquisition on the cement side, and that we're specifically talking before the show about the CRH acquisition of Eco Materials. If you're not familiar with Eco Materials, you might be familiar with the previous owner of this asset, which would have been Boral. And then if you're not familiar that they bought it, you might remember that Headwaters owned it before that. And even I'm not old enough to remember who all the owners was of these assets prior to Headwaters. But changes hands a few times, but we're talking about is Flash. So we're specifically talking about the fact that CRH bought Eco Materials, Flash, and gypsum business $2.1 billion with a B. That gets them access to 10 million tons of products being sold every year. 70% of that is Flash, some of it fresh, but most of it harvested at this point. That's a lot of money for harvested ash, Mr. Thrasher. What do you think about this deal? $2.1 billion to get these SCMs in underneath the CRH umbrella.
I think it's definitely a sign of the times of kind of where things are headed. I think it shows the strength of what Eco Materials has been able to do with their assets, and I mean they've got a lot of great people as well. They got some really, really smart folks that work there. They can figure these things out. They've done a really good job with their beneficiation, reclamation, harvesting, open up new channels for that, making that very user friendly for their customers. They've got a really strong reputation, at least in my market. I know they're coast to coast for all intents and purposes. They're pretty big, but at least in our area for sure, they do a great job. And I think it's just going to be really interesting to see kind of how that shakes out. How much are they going to now run like a cement company versus an SCM company, which always seemed, whoever the owner was, even some of their competitors and things, the days of SIFA and others, they tried a little bit more diligently, I think, with purpose to operate a little bit differently than a cement company did. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It's just that they just kind of made that point, at least back when I was a purchaser. It's been many years ago now. It seems it's crazy how time flies, but that's going to be one of the biggest things. It's just going to see real interesting. How do they still have that flexibility and autonomy sort of innovation piece to themselves, or does it all kind of gobble up and move a lot slower until it's time for change and then it's just rushed out? That's not typically how they did business. So, and CRH is definitely integrated heavy downstream. They understand those challenges and how not to do that. They've always seemed to have a good pulse on that too. So that's probably a good fit. Probably going to be a good harmony between business philosophies for those guys. I hope it is because they're both really strong companies in this area and got a lot of influence, and I hope they do it well.
I don't know. I don't know if this is everybody else's experience with CRH, but in the plants that I've gone to, both before and after a CRH acquisition, it didn't seem like a whole lot changed. It seems like when they buy a company, they just say, we're going to they usually keep the name of the existing business and they say it's now a CRH company. And you just sort of see a few upgrades here and there, but the culture of like whatever that plant was, it still is. And so if you're saying that the Eco Materials folks, who I personally don't know from Adam, but if you're saying they got good folks, they're doing good things in your area, my guess is that CRH is going to be the perfect partner for them because they're going to let them continue to be them. They bought them because they were doing well, and so they're going to let them continue to do what they do well and then bolster them where they can.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's very, very accurate as to what has probably got the highest potential of happening.
But it's interesting to me that in the race to get all these SEMs, and we can talk for a moment big picture about why the SEMs are suddenly so important. The climate in the United States for the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions is not, the appetite for that is not as fervent as other places around the world. The different administrations that come through our government prioritize those types of things differently. I think you could argue this is not a political show, so we're not going to get into the opinions, but I think you could state it as a case of fact that the current administration isn't as interested in lowering the carbon. It's not their focus anyway. It's not you need to be meeting these targets to lower emissions this way or that way. However, that is a focus on the European continent. And what we end up with in this country is we have a lot of multinational cement producers. So when you have that, and the goals for these European companies are to reach net zero, or maybe it's just at the moment it might be to reduce their emissions by 50% or some odd percentage. They mean that globally for all of their affiliates. They don't just mean in France or Switzerland. They mean everywhere. And so that affects us. And so you see some of these players for the SEMs, and suddenly SEMs are super important. They're hot commodities. But we live in an environment in the United States where the multinational cement company may place a high value on that SCM, but the concrete producer is not placing that value above the price of Portland cement. So we've got conflicting value sets between the customer and what is now the owner of these SCMs. And I don't know what it's going to take, Lee, to align those interests so that the concrete producer suddenly says, like, yes, I need the value from this SEM and I'm willing to pay for it above and beyond what I'm paying for Portland cement.
Could it also be one of those cases where producers have had so many issues with the 1L cement that they're looking just for any not alternatives, but just ways to help the process? Like if they're having hardened concrete problems, or if they're having performance problems, that was the reason that we got this new customer. They were having 1L cement performance problems with pumping and finishing and everything else, and that's why they wanted Actigel. Actigel helped them out. Could some of these other SCMs alleviate some of these 1L problems that people are seeing?
I mean, that's a good question. It'd have to be a pretty supercharged SCM. I mean, I've heard from folks in the ready mix side that are testing some of these calcined clays, not ours, not we don't sell that yet. I don't know that we're going to, but we're certainly talking about it. But there are some that have been developed and are not on the market yet, and they are unbelievable. Apparently, they were able to replace up to like 50% of their Portland cement. Is allegedly. I have not seen the results. This is just what folks are telling me, and it almost sounds too good to be true. But let me tell you, if you're having problems with 1L and you can get half of it out of there, you'd imagine you'd try to do that, right? Lee, are you seeing anything on the ground? Are you hearing any rumblings of stuff like that?
Yeah, a little bit. Not much yet. I think that's certainly an aspect to being a valuable asset to a ready mix producer that I would love to see us tap into. We've got some of the most interesting and high performance binder options out there in our products and in our cement. So finding some innovative ways of getting that into some projects that may or may not be looking for that true shrinkage compensating concrete performance, but just looking to have a benefit for their everyday concrete. And
You're working on
and the other things that we've all talked about as far as scalability and all that kind of things. But I think we've got some potential there, certainly in my market, to kind of start exploring and looking at some of those things. I think it's a lot of that's going to be driven by the age old problem is silo space, but I think if you're in a market where, let's say, you're going to go to a a 1P. Your producer's going to be bringing you a 1P. You got 2 silos, and you've always had, a Class F fly ash in that other silo. Well, now if you've got a 1P and it's not only 1L, but it's 1L with a X percentage of fly ash in it already, in that market what happens if you take something that has 60% clinker and 40% ash in it. You know what it is. So does it really make the most sense for you to have a fly ash, Class F ash in that silo next to that 1P? Probably not. So you're going to start balancing between what goes in there. Can you get access to a slag, or maybe a more reactive ash, or what's your admix capability going to let you do with anything that's something that you wouldn't normally consider, like a ground calcium carbonate or anything, any other type of pneumatically driven powder that you can put in there? Or do you just simply say, well, I know what I can do with this, and this is fantastic, so I'm just gonna ignore it's a 2-silo plant. It's just gonna be one product in both silos, and we're gonna rock and roll. I think that's kind of where a lot of folks will just go. But I think it's the innovation side that's more exciting and probably going to give people that advantage and that leg up. But I think a lot of people are just going to sort of bite the bullet and say, well, okay, well, they're giving me something that's 70% clinker, 70%, 60% clinker. That's like a 30 or 40% replacement mix I used to run. So that's just what I have in my silos. And here's you're going to get what you're going to get. And they'll try to overcome it with an admix package. And there's probably nothing wrong with that approach in plenty of markets and plenty of plants. But then that's just going to stress that supply of all that, Now you've got a single source of powder, not two. So what happens if a terminal goes down or the mill goes down, We see that what those ripple effects do now, putting people in allocations and things when just one plant has a hiccup. So everybody's not going to be able to take that approach. And that's where it's going to get dynamic. That's where it's going to get real interesting.
Yeah, what's keeping say a guy enters into the supplementary cementitious market with a new product, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be calcined clay or whatever, but they're gonna take 10% of the clinker is gonna come out, or if it's already a blended product with fly ash and cement that's being sold, and they're going to reduce that by say 10%. So at a plant that's doing 50,000 yards a year, so you're talking probably 12,000 tons a year at least of powder. At least, it could be more. But if they take 10 of that, you only need 1,200 tons a year of this other material for that one ready mix plant. What's the problem with just providing? Why wouldn't that company just provide a small silo, like a bolt-on that holds, a couple truckloads, a truckload at a time or whatever, because you're only going to be using 1,200 tons a year. Seems like you could just have a bolt-on silo. It wouldn't be, then those aren't as expensive as like some of these, gigantic ones. I don't know. I think that if somebody's serious and they want to come in and they're going to sign contracts, you'd have to probably get more than one plant and actually be able to scale that business. But I don't see why they couldn't come in and work together with a concrete plant to get a bolt-on in there and figure out some kind of leasing arrangement to get it funneled in there.
Yeah, I know some of that that's happened in the past. There's some agreements that have taken place. It's so plant specific. It's so hard to find two ready mix plants that are the same. It's pretty rare. So it really just depends on what is that footprint, what is that superstructure, what's that air permit, what's your traffic flow, and you can figure all those things out if it's a necessity. I think it's just going to be that balance, and I can see plenty of folks just saying, well, I'm just going to fill my silo up with what I can get, and there you go, figure it out, rock and roll, versus wanting to make all those changes, because to a lot of folks, I can see they're going to wonder, is this a long-term problem? Is this something that's here to stay? You still hear so many of those rumblings, like you brought up before, that, there's been a shift in political winds and it may not be as important. I'm of the opinion that regardless of the politics involved, because so much money's attached to it at this point globally, it may ebb and flow, but it ain't going backwards. And a lot of, programs just don't roll back once they're in place when they're policy. So it may slow down, but it's not going to go away. But I think a lot of people are going to be hoping for that, like the the hats that are all, make type 1-2 again, and pushing to get cement producers in their markets to go back to producing a 1-2, or they're ramping up their imports of foreign produced 1-2 to bring it into their market. That's going to have an impact and be there for a while. But I think the hang up for most everybody in making that capital investment is, well, how permanent is this? And so I think there's going to have to be pretty strong agreements between supplier, producer, customer, and equipment to kind of figure some of that stuff out. Some folks will, other folks will just kind of, like I said, back up and punt and just say, we're gonna do what's the easiest. Easy button was created in the ready mix industry.
Yeah, and I need a discount. I think that phrase was also created in the ready mix business as well.
Yeah.
I think going back to the supply of some of these cementitious materials, like, I mean, it's so interesting that because the volumes can be so massive, and some of these industries just aren't used to that, and you could sell out a plant just having one customer, which is, I mean, that's scary as a producer and supplier. You don't want to be beholden to one person, but it's just it's the volume's the name of the game, and so the capex is real. There's no doubt about it. But if there's supply agreements in place, I think people should be jumping on this. I really do, and I hope, regardless of what anybody's opinion is on greenhouse gas emissions, I think innovation is amazing. I think it's great, and if we are innovating our way into needing less limestone for the clinker, that frees up. Does it free up limestone for use as aggregate? Because all these resources are finite at some point. So if we're able to shift those materials around so they can be used and extended, then we're just extending the life of our industry, and I think that's all a positive thing.
Yeah, I do too. I think regardless of what's triggering it, I think innovation, making concrete better, is always a good thing. I think we're probably going to see sort of a shift once again that just sort of advances concrete technology in this country. It's happened in other points and parts of the world. I remember when I was in the admix business and we first started selling polycarboxylates, we kind of leveraged that advancement coming from Japan and points in Asia, and how well they had done it, and the Europeans, and they were ahead of us in that technology. And that's something that was kind of ingrained in me years ago, coming out of college and doing that international internship, is that the U.S. technology wise in concrete is just kind of behind the rest of the world. I don't know that that's going to be true down the road. I think we're going to we got an opportunity here to take some of those lessons from what they've done globally and just make it better here. Just do it better than what they've done. Learn from those lessons and take it forward, because we got a whole group of people that are going to be that next wave, and the next coming in the next 5 to 10 years in this industry. They're going to start figuring it out and really making some advancements. I saw a stat that kind of got my attention in the latest magazine from NRMCA, that last year, and I had no idea, back in May, 3.9 million people graduated high school. It's the highest number of high school graduates we've ever had in this country. And I'm thinking, crap, what are they going to do with AI and labor shortage and everything we've been hearing about, all these last several years of just got to do more with less, and we don't have enough people. And now you're seeing, the resurgence in the trades and getting things done and making things, building things, doing things. I think that would be fantastic if we do see a manufacturing resurgence and we find ways to give that younger generation a chance to do a job. And the downstream effect is that, well, now you've actually got more people to talk to. You got more customers to try to satisfy. There's more opinions in the room. Whereas for a while here, if you can convince one or two guys on a job that this is the way to do it, it just gets done, because he's doing the role, or she's doing the role of, 4 or 5 different people. So you only got to convince that person. Down the road, you're going to have to convince a lot of people, more so than you are now. And there's going to be a lot more options available. So I think we have a chance here to take it and do it better and do it for the long haul. I think college football will probably settle out and be more consistent before the ready mix industry is going to be. It may be that 2030 to 2040 decade that really sort of sets what's going to be for generations to come. Kind of like the admix advances in the 80s. We're still probably benefiting from some of the things that those companies decided to do when that consolidation started happening, and they really got innovative and really got focused on servicing their customers coming out of the embargoes and things in the 70s that really, the energy crisis that really slowed things down. I mean, it's crazy to think, I remember talking to guys that said, they only run their plant 3 days a week. It's just mind boggling. Even in the downturn, even when things were horrible, we were running more than 3 days a week, but that triggered when that turned loose, that triggered that innovation in that 80s decade that we're probably still benefiting from in many ways in this industry. So I'm hoping that 2030 to 2040, when those, high school kids now kind of really get buckled down, they finish school or they learn their trade and they really understand the business, and then they want to set themselves apart. They want to be the leaders and the innovators. My career is still going to be here. I hope at that point I'll still be kicking and can see some of that. But if we don't innovate on the flip side of that, if we don't innovate in this industry, in our acceptance and in our means of testing and the paperwork side of this industry, which is what a lot of that ASTM, workshops focused on, then all it's going to be is just, kind of not for nothing, but it's going to be a lot harder to bring about. I think that's probably going to be where the biggest change in this industry needs to happen going forward before I end my career is going to be how we accept concrete, how we test it, and how we validate that it meets the engineering design. Because that stuff is still as antiquated as you can possibly imagine. I mean, it's terrible. It's been the running joke forever in this industry that, you cut and paste a spec from an old DOT or Army Corps of Engineer or an old engineering spec. You can tell by the typeface it was done on a typewriter, and they're still cutting and pasting it. We got to get past that, because the rest of everything is gonna happen. The money's behind it, the impulses behind it, the needs behind it. It's gonna happen. But what's going to stymie it more than equipment and silo space is going to be that paperwork of acceptance and design, and people that just can't get past making 6x12 cylinders on 3-inch slump concrete that got to sit out in the heat for 4 days before they go take a break. And it better break compressive strength at seven days, or you're going to get a stamp on this thing and have to have 17 different meetings. I mean, if that doesn't go away, I don't know what we're going to do.
Is it you think it's generational too? Like we're talking about all these innovations and everything, and we've talked about in previous episodes about the knowledge that's leaving the industry, that's retiring out. Could it be that maybe one of the reasons for all of this innovation is because of this younger generation stepping up into these leadership roles, that like folks our age and, in their 40s and 50s that are really into these, upper management roles that are making these decisions? They're maybe a little bit open-minded to some of these folks that are retiring in the last handful of years. They were kind of set in their ways for 20 and 30 years. And we got this new group of folks that are like just way more open-minded and willing to try different things. I wonder if that's maybe one of the reasons that there's so much change going on right now. We're just willing to try more stuff.
Yeah. And I look at, kind of my age group, that Gen X group. I heard some going up down the road, listen to a lot of podcasts and listen to, a lot of satellite radio stuff. And they were talking about, the Gen X is the X because we didn't stand for anything. And I think that was just a complete misnomer. I think we stood for change and innovation and jumping up and not afraid to get our hands dirty and get work done and move forward and just take all those lessons and understand it's not going to be just handed to us. You got to go out and earn it. You got to go out and get it. You got to make it happen. And so now we're in this transition phase where the baby boomers ahead of us, it's a stereotype, but all the memes and jokes about learning how to text and learning how to email and do, you don't hear as much about that anymore because a lot of those folks have reached that point where they're retiring and they're leaving. And my generation of folks has had to figure that stuff out because we didn't have a choice, because we're managing the people that can do it 10 times better than we can. So we can't allow them to make a joke about us because I'm not going to have to worry. I'm still going to have to worry about them in 15 years. I can't say, well, I'm 5 years away from retirement. I ain't going to do all this. I had one of my long running, sales buddies is still not retired. And I was joking with him the other day, and he said they're trying to do more computer stuff. He said he ain't having it. They can either send him out to pasture or whatever. He ain't doing it. That's going to go away because you're going to have to. And if we've got, that many younger folks coming in, this 07, 08 baby boom kind of, I don't know what they're going to be called, but that group that's coming in now, they've grown up with it. It's been with them like the pogo stick and the bicycle were from my folks, the mechanical thing, the going out and getting stuff done. Well, now technology is just a given for them. It's just there, but they've seen what COVID did, and they saw that sequestration, and they saw that reliance on media, not memories, and making memories and doing things with people. I think there's going to be such a resurgence in them to go out and get stuff done that it's going to be big. So yeah, we're going to still be around in my generation to kind of manage that and shepherd that through. So if we don't do it in a way that kind of helps all that back end stuff too, which is why I think AI is surging and all the software companies are growing and blasting out different new things. The podcast that you guys did with Ben Rapchuk was fantastic. And I think he's dead on about just, there's always been change and innovation on the software side, but now it's more of with purpose, and it's really got some teeth to it because it's expected. That's just going to be what's inherent. And so that's not going to be the differentiator here pretty soon. It's going to be, what do you do with it? And that's only going to matter what comes off the back of that chute, what goes in that formwork, what happens when that finisher gets through with it, because I don't care what you do with technology or materials or anything else, it is still an art. It is still a regional business. It is still people driven. So if we can get more people doing it and aware of what it takes and how to get it in there, then we're going to have to change that acceptance side. We're going to have to change the judgment side, the specifications and the codes and things like that. They're going to have to update faster than what they could ever learn. They're just going to have to rely on the folks that have been doing it and give it a shot.
That's it. I'm sold. Lee Thrasher for president 2028. Let's go ahead and print the banners, make the signs. Chief of staff, I'll volunteer. You don't have to pick me, but I'll volunteer. Lee, I'd love to get you out of here, but I need one more thing from you. Joey and I need to know that in all of your extensive travels, what is the meal that still sticks out in your mind today? And then for the folks who missed it on the previous episode, Joey and I talked about, we got in a discussion about, we were visiting a mine out in the middle of nowhere, New Mexico, and we needed a place to eat. And they said, hey, if you're driving back to El Paso, which was hours away, but it's the closest airport, so when you go through Las Cruces, there's a small taco stand there on the side of the road. And oh my God, just like literally the second best tacos I've ever had in my life. And it got us talking about, wow, we've been to so many places, traveled so many places, and sometimes there's a meal that just sticks out into your mind. So thanks for letting me go in on that. Hopefully the audience that stays with us in the future, this segment becomes a little bit more consistent, so won't need that gigantic explainer every time. But for this one, what is that meal? What are your tacos El Vagon in La Cruces that will stick with you forever? What's your place?
Now that is enormously tougher than asking what's the craziest thing you've seen on the job site. I can answer that one pretty easy. And you're talking to a guy who's lost 70 pounds in the last, year and a half. And I got that way because I was traveling and eating. I had a thing that I came up with a long time ago. I wanted to see all 50 states by the time I was 50, and either had to spend the night or eat a meal locally. Drive through McDonald's didn't count. I had to sit and talk to locals. I had to experience the local flavor. So that's been my thing forever. It's not that chain rush. It's when I go somewhere new, I want to know, where's all the pickup trucks at 5:00 in the morning grabbing breakfast. I want to know where the locals eating, what's that local family owned business. So I hardly ever go anywhere in the Southeast these days where I can't look on my map or go through my Rolodex in my head of good food and find something. So that's a hard question to ask. My instinct says my favorite, whatever I smell when I walk in the door coming home. That's probably going to be a cheesy but very.
That's too cheesy. That tells me his wife listens to the podcast. No. All right, let's.
I'll give you one though. I'll give you one, okay. Just because this was when my wife was with me. It wasn't a work trip. This was a personal trip we were taking a couple of years back. I spent the first part of my career in Georgia and South Georgia, which is a different country. And being from the South and loving fried chicken, they do fried chicken different down South. So between Carter's Chicken and Cordele, we built a plant in Cordele. We're down there for some of the very first pours. And I'm like, all these folks are coming in from California. I'm like, I'm going to get you guys Carter's Chicken. You got to experience Carter's Chicken, or you really ain't been to Crisp County unless you've eaten a little Carter's Chicken. They do fried chicken different. But we had the one that sticks out. So we had a family trip going, from north of Atlanta down to Gulf Shores. So we're trying to pick out how to wind it around. And there was a construction on 300. So we had to divert. And I'm thinking, all I got to do is divert another 20 minutes and I can go through Blakely and get me some Blakely chicken. And my kids are like packed in the back of the car like cordwood. And they're like, what? No, we're ready to get out of this car. I want to go swimming. I want to go. No, you want some chicken. So they were starving, hungry, couldn't wait. So my wife actually got them Dairy Queen. And I was like, y'all don't know what you're missing. The next hour, you're going to be miserable and I'm going to be happy. Hour later, we swing in, go up Blakely Chicken. I get back and open that box and they didn't want any. I mean, the smell hadn't been in the car 5 seconds. They're like, ooh, what's that, Daddy? What's that? Let me have. Nope, not going to do it. So one of my best meals was just because I got a chance to prove a point to my kids that I know where to eat, and trust me, it's going to be good. And that was Blakely Chicken down in good old South Georgia, Blakely, Georgia.
There you have it, folks. If you're down in South Georgia, hopefully they're still popping in their business. If that chicken was that good, I have a feeling they're still around.
Oh yeah, they upgraded a few years back and actually put a few tables outside. So
all right, good deal. Well, that was a good answer.
There's so many. I just recently took a trip with my son to Memphis and took him to Rendezvous. Him and his buddy.
Yeah, how'd they like it?
Oh man, they wanted to go back and get brisket for dessert.
There's two places in Atlanta I used to always recommend. I don't know if one of them is there anymore, but the one that is there, the Vortex.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
many times. I like the one 5 the best.
So I think that's the one that I went to. It was like a little hole in the wall, just about.
Yeah.
But it was all done up.
Yeah.
And then the other one I used to tell people about was down in it was in Midtown, but it was a food truck. And back in like the early teens, they started having food trucks come out. Sometimes there's like one or two, but then they really made it a thing, and they'd have a whole line of them. Like I forget which day of the weeks they'd come out, and there was one there that was called Blaxican, and it was Mexican soul food by these people from New Orleans. And it was God Almighty, it was so good. So, but I think that company's still around. I don't know if they still have a food truck in Atlanta or not, though.
Yeah, my favorite one in Atlanta, hands down, was Carver's, and it's no longer in business. But that was the best food in Atlanta for a long time.
Lee, thank you again for coming on the show, sharing your wisdom, letting us know what's going on over at CTS. If the folks on here want to get in touch with you in any way, what's a way that they can reach out and get a hold of you?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn pretty easy. I'm on there off and on. That comes in spurts as well, but you can certainly reach out to me. First initial last name, L Thrasher at CTS Cement. That's pretty easy to remember as well. Just shoot me a line and be happy to get back with you. And it's fun talking to you guys. I know it kind of bounced all over the place, but I kind of like those. It's good to just sort of get a general snapshot with you guys. I don't think there's a lot of wisdom in there from my side, but at least hopefully I can inspire a little bit of future thought for some innovation in our industry. Everybody's just, want to make concrete better.
No, we love having you on. Love, that we get to be friends and do this together. And, it's interesting. Sometimes industry acquaintances feel like become real friendships, and you're one of those people for us. So we appreciate you and everything you're doing, and never met anybody that say a bad word about you. And that's kind of guys you like to have
You need to get out
on the
more.
podcast. Well, okay, I've said bad words about you to my daughter when I had to explain to her that you were a Tennessee fan, and sometimes people just don't think right, and you can't be upset with them. It's America; they're allowed to be wrong. So with that, roll tide, everyone. Hope you all have a wonderful day. Thanks for tuning in to the Add 10 Gallons Concrete Podcast.
Thanks, guys.
My whole life I just wanted someone who would notice me. My whole life I just wanted to be somebody to be. Yeah, I just wanna be great. Yeah, I just wanna be great. Yeah, I just wanna be great. Yeah, yeah, yeah.